Hello everyone. Welcome to my Toronto kitchen. It is February. It is a very dreary, snowy winter day, but we are going to be making something that brings joy to whoever eats them, and that is pancakes. I love pancakes. They're definitely a childhood favorite for me, and I take them seriously. I rarely order pancakes when I go out to eat brunch or breakfast because truthfully, I know I can make them better at home. And I guess that's a bit of a blessing and a curse, but home is the best place to eat pancakes. And seeing as Pancake Day is on the horizon, I figured I would share with you Rock Recipes top 10 tips to make the perfect buttermilk pancakes. So, tip number one is start with a good recipe. Generally, you don't want your batter to be too thin. You don't want your batter to be too thick. You want to hit right in the middle in that sweet spot. This recipe, for example, this is our best buttermilk pancakes recipe, has equal parts milk and flour. And the recipe goes as follows. 1 3/4 of a cup of flour, half a teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of baking soda. So you're just going to stir all of those dry ingredients together, and then you're going to set that aside for a moment. Then we're going to work on the wet mixture, which is comprised of 1 egg. I like to beat the egg first and just kind of get it nice and airy. To that egg, I'm going to add 1 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 4 tablespoons of melted butter. So that's the recipe. Tip number one, start with a great recipe. This is great because you can just build on this. You can add whatever additions you like, whether those be blueberries, chocolate chips, any other kind of fruit, bananas, coconut, and it's delicious every time. Tip number two. So no matter what recipe you're using, although I think you should use ours, use buttermilk, even if it calls for milk. And the reason for this is because it yields a fluffier pancake. Buttermilk is more acidic than milk, and it's going to react with the baking soda like a volcano science project, but less dramatic, to create a fluffy pancake. If you do not have buttermilk, that's no problem. All you have to do is add a little bit of acid to plain milk. So for every cup of milk you use, add 1 tablespoon of either lemon juice or white vinegar. This is actually what I did for this recipe because I couldn't get my hands on any buttermilk at the supermarket. No problem. Generally, I have everything I need for pancakes at home anyway, so why make the extra trip? 3, avoid bland pancakes by adding vanilla extract. Well, vanilla is to baking like salt is to cooking. It really just brings out the flavor and is a nice addition. 4, pay close attention to how much baking powder goes into your recipe. We think we've hit the sweet spot with this, but generally you do need a good amount to make a pancake fluffy. Tip number 5, don't put too much oil or butter in the pan. I know some people really love like a super crispy edge, but I don't think it's worth the risk of like a greasy or soggy pancake that's just like kind of laden with oil. Use just a little bit of oil in the pan. I use just like a teaspoon of oil, and then I take carefully a paper towel and just kind of spread it evenly in my nonstick pan. If you have a spray cooking oil, this will also work. And I like to use a nonstick pan just because it's what I have on hand. Mine is fairly new, meaning it's nice and flat and even on the bottom. It's not warped and uneven. That's going to make it more difficult to cook your pancakes. So use a griddle or use a nice flat nonstick pan. 6, you don't want to use high heat for these. What you want is kind of medium, medium-low. I use medium-low because you want to give them the time to cook evenly and to rise. They're going to take maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes on the first side, a little bit less on the second side after you flip them. So just keep that in mind. So get to know your stove, get to know your oven. It really helps in the future and makes things a lot quicker. 7, don't use too much sugar in the batter. You're probably going to be adding a ton of maple syrup to these anyway. And please use real maple syrup. Like, Respect yourself, use real maple syrup. But in the batter itself, this recipe only has a couple of tablespoons of sugar. That's because in the pan, sugar tends to caramelize, so you don't want the pancakes to burn or get brown too quickly with additional sugar. You don't really need it. 8, wait for the bubbles. Once you put those pancakes in the pan, what you want to do is just leave them until you see a nice even coating of bubbles across the top. That's how you know you're ready to flip. And then when you flip the pancake, I try not to touch it because what that's going to do is make each side of the pancake like nice and golden brown and even, instead of kind of like creating wrinkles or unevenness in my color. 9, a good thing to remember anytime you're baking, don't overmix. This batter is quite thick, so it's okay if there's little lumps of flour in this batter. All you want to do is make sure all the flour is incorporated just until you can't see streaks of it anymore. Don't overmix when you initially pull everything together, and don't mix it again after you've already started cooking. So like each batch you do, don't mix it, just scoop it right out. Another great tip is just to leave the batter once you're done mixing it. So I'm gonna let that sit for 5 minutes before I even put it in the pan. That's just going to give the batter kind of the opportunity to rise, aerate. The acid is going to react with the baking soda and baking powder, and it's just gonna yield a fluffier pancake. And that was tip number 10. When it comes to add-ins, I like to stick to the classics. I'm a bit of a purist. I like chocolate chips just for the childhood nostalgia of it. Blueberries are probably my favorite if I'm doing blueberry pancakes. I love adding just like a squeeze of lemon juice to it because I think blueberry and lemon is just one of the best combinations ever. And I'm looking for consistency when I make my pancakes. So, I do what I can when it goes in the pan to encourage a round shape. I don't overcrowd my pan. I don't want them to touch. If they do, it's no biggie. I just kind of clean up any splatter. I make sure they're kind of cut apart if the pancakes do end up touching. And then one more little thing I would suggest when they're in the pan. If you're adding additions into your pancakes, blueberries, fruit, chocolate, whatever it is, I never mix my add-ins into the actual batter because everything just sinks to the bottom anyway. You get much better distribution if you just put them right on the cake in the pan. I like to take just a spoon, like a tablespoon, and dip it in the batter. And then I just kind of like paint over my blueberries because basically I find when I flip a pancake and the blueberries or the chocolate makes direct contact with the pan, A, it's gonna get messy and I like keeping my pan clean for the next batch. And B, it gets burnt. Like the chocolate gets burnt and crispy, and the blueberries too just kind of like splatter everywhere. So keep things clean, keep things contained, and it yields a perfect pancake. I hope these tips helped you. I hope you will try one of our recipes for Pancake Day. We have like at least a dozen pancake recipes and variations on this beautiful basic buttermilk version. Let us know how it goes. Let us know if you like them, if the kids like them, and happy Pancake Day.